So you're trying to tell me that your input skills are stronger than your output skills, aka your listening and your reading are way stronger than your speaking and your writing. Let's talk about it. So in this video, I want to go over one, what does this all mean? Two, just remind you that this is all okay. And three, how do we fix it? How do we get you from where you are right now with your ability to understand things when someone says it to you or to read when you are looking at a text? How do we get you from there to actually being able to say the things you want to say and type the things you want to say to another person and be understood? How do we get you there? So if you don't know who I am, my name is Bront'e. I'm a language coach, which means that I help language learners like you go from feeling super frustrated about your language studies, not knowing where to go next, how to make progress, how to maintain that progress, all the way to fluent, using the languages that you're learning in your day-to-day life, because that is the goal. And so in this video, we're going to be breaking down input-output skills and why you might be feeling that your listening and your reading is stronger than your speaking and your writing. Why does that even happen? So let's break it down. Listening and reading are input skills, meaning this is what you take in as you are learning languages or using them. You're taking in information that someone else created, that someone else curated, and is giving to you. And then speaking and writing are your output skills. These are the skills where you are producing things. You're producing your ideas. You are sharing your ideas with another person to be understood. And a lot of times, not all the time, but for many of us, listening and reading come much more natural to us than speaking and writing. Why is this? Well, if you are like me and you are an introvert, this means that peopling is kind of hard sometimes. Like really, it's kind of hard. And so when you have this pressure to constantly have to talk to another person and get feedback, it can feel overwhelming. It can make you feel anxious. And sometimes you're just tired. You're just exhausted. And so what do we default to? We default to reading books and pulling out textbooks. Like I literally have mine right here, one of mine for Japanese. And you're like, I'm just going to do some textbook work, or I'm just going to pull out flashcards, and you're studying. And it's great. It is helpful, but it is not helping you to do the things that you were trying to do, aka speak and write. And so what this means is that we tend to put a lot more time, effort, energy into boosting those input skills, the way that we take in information, and we put a lot less effort and practice into the output skills. So what's missing? Practice. But I just want to make sure that we're on the same page and knowing that this is normal. There are some people who tend to have their output skills stronger than their input. These are the people who are very comfortable, confident, and love to interact with other people and get that feedback. And then there are people like me where input and output's not as balanced because input is here, output is a little bit further down, And no matter where you are in your language studies, that is okay. Because once you can identify it, this is the clarity stage that I teach all of my students and clients. Once you're able to identify this, then you can create a plan that's really personalized to you and your needs. You get to create a schedule that aligns with those needs and actually helps you to do the things without procrastination, because procrastination queen here. And you create a routine that is reliable, that gets you consistently making and maintaining progress. And let's talk about what that looks like. If you're like me and many of the people that I work with, and you struggle with those output skills, speaking and writing, you know then that you have to make that a priority. So you have to be strategic. When you're trying to improve, let's say, your speaking skills, speaking is more than just speaking. Speaking is recall. How much information can you recall from your mind and say out loud to other people when you need it? Can you pull it out of that box of vocabulary and actually use it in context? It is also recognition. When someone else says something to you, do you recognize it in conversation versus when you hear it in isolation? Like the way that I'm talking right now versus the way that I am talking right now. Sometimes we blend words together. Sometimes they slur together. And then there's slang and there's dialects. So many things that affect the way that we understand people, the way we understand each other. There's vocabulary, there's grammar. There's so many pieces or aspects to the speaking skill. And one of the things that I teach all of my people is to isolate that, to narrow it down to the one or two areas you want to focus on. So for example, if you want to focus on recall, like you can recognize words when you see them and when you hear them, but when you have to actually speak to someone, you're like, what is that word again? Oh my God, wait, I know it. It's right there. And you can never pull it out when you need it. You need to practice on recall. You need to practice on being able to pull and retrieve the information as you need it. And there's so many different ways to use this. One of the ways that is probably the most popular way is flashcards. Lots of people love flashcards. Do I love flashcards? I don't really use them for my own language studies. Like I use them in the short term, not in the long term. That's a whole other separate video conversation to have. But you can write sentences. You can actually use it in your day-to-day life. Like, for example, recording yourself speaking out loud, writing notes, whether it's language learning related or just random notes throughout the day. There are so many possible things that you can do. And if you need ideas, I literally have a database of 75 plus study strategies for every language, for every level, beginner, intermediate, advanced, and for all skills: speaking, listening, reading, writing, grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. So like when I say there are a ton of ways, there are a ton of ways. So narrow down that skill. Let's say it is recall. Then you need to tackle it. What are the resources you're going to use? And it's really important to know how the resources are going to help you. How is it going to help you achieve the thing that you're trying to achieve? If you're deciding to use an app like Lingodeer or Duolingo or Memrise, why? Why is this the app that you've chosen? And once you've made that decision, you need to stick to it for, I recommend, about 2 weeks or so you can give it a good chance, so that you can test it out and revise and make changes along the way to what you need in order to actually do the things you're trying to do. You got to give it a chance, and you need to keep track of your progress. So you need to know what's working and what's not working so that you can refine your study process over time. The clarity work and knowing what it is that you actually need, this planning part, and then the tracking and reflection are all key parts of the entire process that I teach every single person that I work with. It's literally what I do for my own language studies, currently at 9 languages and planning to get a few more under my belt this year, and we'll see how that goes. And so if you are someone who is struggling to balance your input and output skills, then I want to ask you these questions. Are you someone who avoids strategies like these? Avoiding texting and talking with other people, not making your own sentences for whatever reason it is, not practicing your pronunciation or speaking out loud, or reading things out loud every chance that you get. You're choosing not to journal or to write things down or just use the language in writing. If any of those things made you immediately go, oh yeah, that's me, I do that, then you know some potential areas that you can focus on. You can decide, okay, I'm not going to avoid texting and talking with people, or I'm going to actually make more of my sentences. And hint, hint, wink, wink. I have a whole course on creating sentences, my sentence building pro. So if you're like, I don't even know where to start with this process, I'm going to put the links down in the description for this as well. Pronunciation practice. Pronunciation practice is such an easy thing to do because anytime you're reading something, you can just read it out loud. That adds another layer of practice and support to what you're doing. And this is really important because you want to get your mouth used to saying the words in the languages that you're learning, because you can recognize and go, oh yeah, I know how to pronounce it. But then when you actually say it out loud, you're like, oh, that wasn't exactly how I meant to say it. And if it's a language with tones, you definitely want to get it right. Like you don't want to mess that up. So my homework for you, my actionable task for you, is to identify what is currently missing from your skills. What area do you feel is lacking the most, or you feel that you have the most trouble with? And what about that skill is the challenge? So I always ask my students and my clients, what about speaking is difficult for you? What about vocabulary is hard for you? What about listening is difficult for you? Whatever it might be. You can also think about what are the specific things that you've been trying to do in your language studies, but you just can't do yet. Maybe the ways that you expect to use the language, you're just not there yet. Maybe it's your confidence. Maybe it's the practice. Maybe it's the actual information. You just don't have enough vocabulary to explain yourself in the ways that you want to. Because it is possible to talk around the topic, but not if you don't have the vocabulary to do so. And so take these questions and this video as like a DIY coaching session, because this is literally the line of questioning that I go through in my office hours or in my one-on-one coaching with language learners to help you narrow down exactly what is the real cause of the challenge you're facing right now. What are some real actions that you can take? Not a potential, but really what can you do right now with the time you have right now, the energy you have right now to actually start seeing more progress and maintaining that progress over time. Because the goal is to use the language. And so if you're not there yet, what is stopping you? Let's tackle that. And if you remember nothing else from this video, I'm going to tell you something that you're probably not going to like, that at some point you have to start using the language that you're learning. Yes, I know you're scared, you're hesitant, you're like, Bront'e, but I'm not really ready yet. We're going to get you there. We are going to get you to feel ready. So until then, you have to figure out what strategies are you going to do instead. And then at some point, you're going to have to start using those languages. And you dip your toe in, you step a little bit into it, or if you're someone who loves to just dive in head first, you got to use the language. That is the only way to, one, to see what gaps you have, and two, to put what you're doing into practice, to put all of the effort that you have put into your language studies, to finally use all the things that you've been doing, all that effort you've been gathering and working so hard on, to finally see some results in action. So what I need from you right now, comment down below. What areas in your language studies are you planning to work on? Are you more of an input focused person? Like you need more work on input, which is listening and reading, or you're an output person. You need more help with speaking and writing. Which of those two categories is your focus right now? And what do you plan to do about it? And I've included so many resources in the description below. Grab them. Some are free. Some are not free, but all are super helpful. And let me know what you want to hear next from me. Can't wait to see you in my next video. Bye.